deep in the mist-choked forests of Humboldt County, where the trees grow tall and the shadows stretch long. People disappear without a trace. They call it Murder Mountain, a place where the lost are never found, where whispers drift through the trees, and where something waits beneath the soil, hungry for its next harvest. Some say the mountain takes those who wander too far, but the truth is worse. You shouldn't have come. The road to Murder Mountain wasn't on any map. Jason stared at the dirt path ahead, its edges blurred by the towering redwoods that swallowed the fading daylight. His ride, an old beater pickup that reeked of weed and sweat, creaked as it rolled to a stop. The driver, a wiry man named Buck, took a long drag from his cigarette and exhaled through his nose. "This is where I leave you, kid." Jason shifted his backpack over his shoulder and stepped out, the dirt crunching beneath his boots. He was 22, broke, and desperate. Trimming season in Humboldt was supposed to be an easy way to make a few grand under the table, just a couple of weeks of clipping buds and stuffing them into plastic bins. He'd heard about this farm through a guy in Arcata who'd sworn the pay was good. Now standing in the eerie quiet, he wasn't so sure. "Gus'll meet you down the path," Buck said, flicking his cigarette into the trees. "You work hard, you get paid. Don't do anything stupid." The truck rattled away, its taillights vanishing around the bend. Jason turned toward the path ahead. It was overgrown, barely wide enough for an ATV, winding through the dense forest like something animals might use more than people. He adjusted his pack, squared his shoulders, and walked into the trees. Somewhere above, the sun was setting, and Jason was walking straight into the dark. The farmhouse appeared after nearly a mile of hiking, a squat, weathered structure with boarded-up windows and a sagging tin roof. A few outbuildings stood nearby, one of them an old barn, the other what looked like a processing shed. Everything smelled like earth, pine, and the skunky scent of weed. A figure emerged from the shadows near the porch. Gus was older than Jason expected, maybe late 50s, with thick shoulders and a beard gone silver. He wore a flannel with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms crisscrossed with scars. "Jason?" Jason nodded. "Yeah. Guy in Arcata said you needed hands." Gus studied him for a long moment, chewing on a toothpick. Then he nodded toward the house. "Dinner's at 7. Work starts at dawn." Jason followed him inside. The living room was dimly lit by a single hanging bulb. 3 other workers sat at a rough wooden table, eating from tin plates. A blonde girl with tired eyes, a skinny guy in a beanie, and a burly man with a face like a boulder. None of them spoke. Jason sat, ate what he was given, some kind of greasy stew with too much salt, and listened to the quiet. No one had cell service. No one asked questions. And outside, in the trees, something moved. Trimming was monotonous work. Hours bent over a table, clipping buds, filling bins, hands sticky with resin. Jason fell into a rhythm, barely speaking, watching the pile grow. But things felt off. The first thing he noticed was the missing people. The blonde girl, Sarah, whispered one night that they used to have 2 more workers. "They left," she said, but she didn't look like she believed it. The second thing was the shed, the one no one went near. It sat behind the barn, its doors padlocked, its roof sagging under years of rain. Every night, Jason saw Gus unlock it, slip inside, and close it behind him. And sometimes, just barely, he thought he heard something inside, something breathing. The first scream came on the 7th night. Jason sat up in bed, heart hammering. The sound had come from outside, near the shed. The other workers stirred, but no one spoke. Then, Heavy footsteps. The front door creaked open. Jason crept to the window. Below, in the moonlight, Gus was dragging something across the dirt. A shape. A body. Jason couldn't tell if it was a person or an animal, but the way it twitched made his stomach lurch. The shed door groaned open. The body was shoved inside. Then silence. Jason stepped back from the window. He had to get out. The next morning, Sarah was gone. Gus said she went home. The other workers nodded like that made sense. Jason stared at the processing table, trying not to shake. His hands were stained green with plant resin. Across from him, the beanie guy worked mechanically, eyes hollow. Jason swallowed hard. What happens if we try to leave? Beanie guy didn't even look up. You don't. Jason waited for nightfall. He didn't bother packing, just his boots, his jacket. The forest was thick, but he could find the road. He had to. Midnight. The house was still. He crept past the processing shed, toward the road. A voice. You think I don't see you? Gus stood by the shed, watching. Jason ran. He barely made it 5 feet before something cracked against the back of his skull. He woke up in the shed. It smelled of blood. Something moved in the darkness. A shuffle, wet and heavy. His vision swam. He tried to sit up. Chains rattled. Then a whisper, right by his ear. You stay. Jason turned his head and saw it. A man. Or what was left of one. Skin sagging, eyes white and glassy. His mouth was stretched into something that might have once been a grin, but the flesh had rotted away, leaving only a gaping maw. His hands, no claws, dragged along the floor as he crawled closer. Jason screamed. No one ever found Jason. A month later, Buck picked up another kid looking for work. He dropped him off at the same dirt path, in the same fading light, and the cycle began again. The road narrowed as they drove deeper into the trees. Derek gripped the wheel, eyes flicking between the crumbling asphalt and the GPS on his phone. It was useless out here. No service, no blue dot moving along a road that didn't seem to exist. Looks like we're on our own, he muttered. Liz sat in the passenger seat, checking their recording equipment. That's what we wanted, isn't it? From the back seat, Marco let out a low chuckle. Yeah, man. We're looking for lost people in Humboldt County. Kind of fitting that we might end up lost, too. Derek didn't laugh. The three of them ran a small but growing true crime podcast, Vanished, focused on disappearances across America. Humboldt County, Murder Mountain, was a gold mine of missing person cases, especially among trimmers who came for the marijuana harvest and never left. They'd heard whispers about a house deep in the woods, a place where some of those lost souls had been taken, a place no one ever returned from. It was just a story, right? The house wasn't abandoned. Derek could tell the moment they stepped into the clearing. The 2-story structure stood at the edge of a sloping hill, its windows black and empty. The porch sagged, the wood warped from decades of rain. Vines twisted up the siding like grasping fingers. But someone had been here. The front door was open just a crack. A light flickered inside. Creepy as hell, Marco muttered, shouldering his backpack. Liz clicked on her recorder. We're standing outside a house that locals claim has a dark history, she whispered. Some say it was a grow operation back in the 90s. Others say it was a trimmer camp gone bad. Either way, people have gone missing here. Maybe tonight we'll find out why. Derek exhaled and pushed the door open. It swung inward with a groan, revealing the smell first. Rotting wood, damp earth, something faintly metallic, and then the inside. The walls were covered in scratches, not graffiti, Not carvings, claw marks, deep uneven gouges in the wood, stretching from the floor to the ceiling. Marco whistled. Whatever lived here had some issues. Liz ran her fingers over the scratches, or whatever died here. Derek moved deeper into the house, flashlight sweeping over dust-covered furniture, old beer cans, a rotting mattress in the corner, a pile of shoes near the back door, too many for one person. Then he noticed the staircase. A single red handprint stained the railing. A chill ran through him. "We should check upstairs," Liz said. Derek hesitated. "Maybe we..." Something thumped upstairs. A slow, heavy sound. Footsteps. They froze. Derek's breath hitched. Marco grabbed a rusted fire poker from the floor. A second thump echoed. Closer this time. Then the floorboards groaned. Someone, or something, was up there. Liz swallowed. "Hello?" Silence. Then a voice. Low. Ragged. Wrong. "You shouldn't have come." Derek ran first. He didn't think, just bolted, shoving Liz and Marco toward the door. The house slammed shut behind them. The wind. Number 2 strong. Something wanted them inside. Marco yanked at the door. Locked. Liz turned. The window. Derek spun, ready to smash through the glass, and saw something coming down the stairs. A man, but wrong. His eyes were sunken, skin waxy, and stretched too tight. His fingers twitched at his sides, long nails clicking against the banister. The air reeked of rotting meat. "You shouldn't have come," the thing repeated. Derek didn't wait. He grabbed a wooden chair and swung. The thing screamed. They ran, burst through the door, hit the dirt path, and never looked back. Branches whipped at their faces. The forest closed in. But the house? It was silent. No chase, no footsteps, nothing. They reached the car, gasping. Marco fumbled with the keys. Liz looked back, waiting. The trees swayed. The house watched, but nothing followed. Not yet. They made it back to town, locked the motel door, and played back the recording. There was something extra. A whisper, low, beneath Liz's voice from earlier in the house. "You shouldn't have come." But this time, there was something else. A second whisper, barely audible. Not yet. The house in the woods is still there. The door is still cracked open. The scratches are still on the walls. And sometimes, at night, the light inside flickers, waiting. The lost coast was no place to get lost. Maya knew that. She'd read the stories before they came out here, how entire logging towns had vanished, how the dense forests of Humboldt County swallowed people whole. People hiked this trail every year, but some of them didn't make it back. Some just disappeared. She and her friends weren't the first outsiders to venture near Murder Mountain, and they wouldn't be the last. They met the Whitlock family on their second day. Maya, Devon, and Colt had been hiking deep into the forest, following an old burned map she had found in an abandoned ranger station. The map showed trails that didn't exist anymore, leading to a clearing deep in the woods. The locals in Garberville had warned them, "People who go off trail up there don't come back. It ain't just the mountain you should be afraid of." Maya hadn't listened, and now, here they were. The cabin sat in the middle of a sun-bleached clearing, half hidden by twisted trees and thick undergrowth. A large garden stretched behind it, filled with tall, leafy stalks. The smell of meat roasting over an open fire drifted through the air. A woman stood on the porch, watching them. The Whitlocks looked like they had been living out here for generations. The father, Amos, was a massive man, his beard streaked with gray, his arms thick with muscle. His wife, Esther, was lean and sharp-eyed, her face lined from years of hard living. 3 grown sons stood near the fire pit, where something sizzled on a spit. Their clothes were old, filthy flannels, stained jeans, barefoot in the dirt. And then there was Lydia, the daughter, young, maybe 20, long stringy hair and eyes too wide, too unblinking. She never stopped smiling. "Y'all look like you could use a good meal," Amos rumbled, stirring the pot. "Ain't much out here but the land and what it gives us." Maya hesitated. The meat on the fire was charred beyond recognition. Devin sniffed the air. "Smells good." Colt nudged him. "Dude, shut up." Esther's gaze flicked over them, lingering just a second too long. "We don't see too many outsiders up here," she said. "You passing through?" Maya cleared her throat. Yeah, just hiking." "You lost?" "No." A long pause. Then Lydia stepped forward, still grinning. "You should stay the night." Maya didn't sleep. She could hear them, moving outside the tent, whispering. The Whitlocks had let them camp nearby, just at the edge of the clearing. Said it was safer than hiking after dark. But Maya felt anything but safe. Something about these people was wrong. She nudged Devin. He was already awake. "Do you hear that?" A branch snapped. Colt shifted in his sleeping bag. "Guys." Then something brushed against the tent. A hand. Maya held her breath. Then a low giggling sound. Lydia. She was outside the tent, watching. At dawn, they packed up. "Leaving already?" Amos asked, standing on the porch. Maya forced a smile. "Yeah, early start." Esther wiped her hands on her apron. The fabric was stained dark. "You kids be careful out there," she said. "Strange things happen in these woods." Maya felt Lydia's eyes on her. Something in her hands. A necklace. A bone necklace. She held it out to Maya. "Take this," she whispered, "for protection." Maya didn't move. Lydia's grin widened. "Or for remembering." Maya snatched her pack and turned toward the trees. They left without looking back. They started hiking back down the mountain. The smell hit them first. Rot. The trees thinned, revealing a garden. But this wasn't just any garden. The stalks were too thick, too gnarled. The roots twisted like veins, and at the base of each plant, bones. Colt gagged. "Jesus Christ." Devin took a step back. "This isn't normal." Maya spotted something glinting in the dirt. A belt buckle, a wallet, still filled with cash. No one had been robbed. They'd been harvested. The Whitlocks had been watching them. Maya turned, just in time to see Lydia step from the trees, barefoot, grinning. "You weren't supposed to see this," she said. Colt grabbed Maya's arm. "We need to go, now." But it was too late. Amos stepped into the clearing, dragging an axe. Esther and the sons moved in from the other side, their hands slick with something dark. "You shouldn't have come here," Amos rumbled. Lydia tilted her head. "Not yet, anyway." Devin ran first. He didn't make it far. They found his body 2 days later. What was left of it? Stripped, boneless. But Colt and Maya, they were never found. Not really. Just their clothes, neatly folded on the edge of the Whitlocks' clearing. And in the garden, weeks later, new plants grew, tall, healthy, and at the base of each one, something white, sticking up from the soil, something shaped like teeth. People still go missing near Murder Mountain. The Whitlocks still live there. Some say they're just off-grid folks, living off the land. Some say they're something worse. But if you hike too far, too deep, you might smell the meat cooking and hear the giggling in the trees, waiting for the next harvest. The Lost Coast was swallowing people again. Sheriff Daniels knew the signs. He'd been working Humboldt County for 30 years, long enough to see the patterns. One person disappears, probably an accident. Two, drugs. Maybe a bad deal, maybe a grower making someone vanish. But when 5 people went missing in the span of a week, something was wrong. Something was feeding again. It started with a fire. The Whitlock cabin, gone overnight, burned to the ground. The deputies who responded found nothing but ashes, nothing except a single set of footprints leading away from the ruins, barefoot, headed into the trees, toward Murder Mountain. 3 days later, a truck was found abandoned on a logging road, its engine still running, the driver's door wide open, and inside the cab, on the worn leather seat, a single human tooth, fresh, still wet with blood. Then came the sounds. People in Garberville started waking up at night, hearing something moving in the trees. Not wind, not animals, something bigger, something breathing. The air smelled strange, thick with the scent of rotting leaves and wet earth, like the forest itself was decomposing. By the time Sheriff Daniels got the 3rd call, he knew it was bad. A mother screaming that her husband was gone, that he had walked outside during the night and never came back, that she had tried to chase after him. But the trees had moved, blocked the way, swallowed him whole. Deputies searched the woods. They found his boots, his phone, still playing static, his wedding ring, half buried in fresh soil, but no body, only the garden. It had been growing. The place where the Whitlocks used to farm was different now. Twisted rows of tall, blackened stalks, their leaves curling like skeletal hands. The soil was dark, wet, red. Sheriff Daniels bent down, running a hand through the dirt. It smelled like meat, like something long dead. His deputy, Wilkes, swallowed hard. "Jesus," he muttered. What the hell did they plant? Daniels didn't answer, because he already knew. Lydia Whitlock came into town that night. She was barefoot, covered in dirt, her clothes hanging in tatters. She didn't cry, didn't speak. She just sat on the steps of the general store, staring at nothing. Daniels knelt beside her. "Lydia," he said. "What happened?" She looked up at him, smiled, and whispered, "It's awake now." The power went out in Garberville. Every light, every generator, gone. The only illumination came from the moon, glowing too bright through the trees. Then, the forest began to move. The first attack came from the gas station. The clerk, 19 years old, fresh out of high school, stepped outside for a cigarette. The CCTV caught everything. Him standing there, exhaling a long drag, then looking up. His face went pale, his mouth opened, as if he was about to scream, and then something yanked him backward, so fast it blurred the screen. He was gone before his cigarette even hit the ground. The next screams came from the trailer park. People running, doors slamming. Wilkes radioed in, voice shaking. "Sheriff, you need to get out here." Daniels drove like a madman. By the time he got there, it was too late. The trailers were empty. The front doors ripped clean off. No blood, no struggle. Just gone. And in the distance, the groaning of trees, though something massive moving through the woods. By dawn, the town was surrounded. A wall of trees, twisted and gnarled, had grown overnight, blocking every road. The town was trapped. Something had woken up in the dirt, something hungry. The Whitlocks had been feeding it for years. Every missing hiker, every lost trimmer, every outsider who had ever vanished near Murder Mountain. They hadn't been buried. They had been planted. And now, the garden had bloomed. It wasn't one thing. It was many, moving between the trees, shifting like shadows. It had too many arms, too many faces. It whispered in stolen voices, the lost, the devoured, the forgotten. You shouldn't have come. Bullets did nothing. Fire only fed it. And by the time the sun rose, Garberville was gone. No one talks about what happened. The town is still on the maps, still listed on Google. But if you drive through Humboldt County looking for it, you won't find it. Just trees, endless trees, and sometimes, late at night, you can hear the whispering, like the wind through the leaves, like chewing, like something waiting for the next harvest.